The tire tracks appeared again that morning. They cut straight across the ranch road, like someone had drawn a line through years of hard work. But this time, Elias Vance wasn't just going to fix the gate. He wasn't going to pretend nothing happened. The person ignoring the gate believed the rules of the neighborhood didn't apply to her. What Elias planned next would make the entire community stop and watch. Elias's ranch sat at the very edge of the Eagle Ridge, a state's HOA. His property had been there long before the new luxury homes and manicured lawns appeared nearby. Acres of quiet land stretched behind a wooden gate that Elias had built himself years earlier. Most of the neighbors respected that boundary, but one person didn't. Sylvia Kensington, the HOA president, had discovered something. The dirt road running through Elias's ranch created a convenient shortcut between two streets in the neighborhood. Instead of driving the long paved road around the hills, she simply opened the ranch gate and drove straight through. At first, Elias thought it was a mistake. He politely asked her not to use the road again. Sylvia smiled, nodded, and drove through again the very next day. The tire tracks kept appearing week after week. Elias repaired the gate twice. Each time, Sylvia treated it like a suggestion instead of a boundary. What she didn't realize was that Elias had spent most of his life building things that were meant to last. If she refused to respect a simple gate, he would build something she couldn't ignore. The next morning, Elias walked the property line with quiet determination. The ranch gate stood slightly crooked again. The latch was forced open just enough for a vehicle to slip through. It wasn't broken, but it had clearly been pushed aside. Elias ran his hand along the wooden side. He knew exactly who had done it. Sylvia's silver SUV had become a familiar sight on the dirt path. The vehicle cut across the ranch regularly. From her perspective, it was simply the fastest way home. From Elias's perspective, it was trespassing. That afternoon, he drove into town and stopped at the local hardware supplier. By the time he returned, a trailer full of materials followed close behind his truck. He brought heavy posts, stone blocks, and concrete mix. Neighbors driving past the ranch entrance slowed down to watch. Elias wasn't just repairing the gate this time. He was measuring the ground on both sides of the entrance carefully and deliberately. By sunset, the very first steel post stood firmly rooted in the soil. Sylvia noticed the construction while driving through the neighborhood later that evening. She slowed her car, staring at the growing structure near the road. Then, she simply smiled to herself. To Sylvia, it probably looked like another small fence, something she could easily move around. But Elias had already designed something much bigger. Once it was finished, that shortcut would disappear forever. Construction continued the entire week. Each morning, Elias worked quietly beside the ranch entrance while trucks delivered more stone and concrete. Neighbors began stopping to ask questions. Elias always gave the same calm answer. He told them he was simply improving the property line. Technically, he wasn't lying, but the structure rising beside the gate was far stronger than a normal fence. Large stone blocks formed the solid base. Heavy steel beams reinforced the center. By midweek, the distinct outline of a thick ranch wall had begun to take shape. Sylvia drove past twice that day. The first time, she simply glanced at it. The second time, she slowed down because something about the wall looked incredibly permanent. Still, she continued using the dirt road. The shortcut had become part of her routine. She drove through the open gate again that evening, leaving another set of tire tracks across the ranch path. Elias watched quietly from the barn as her SUV disappeared down the road. He didn't say a word. He simply returned to the construction site and continued working. The wall wasn't completely finished yet, and the exact moment Sylvia discovered what it truly meant was getting closer every single day. Saturday morning brought the final delivery. A flatbed truck rolled slowly toward the ranch entrance carrying massive stone panels. They were designed to lock together like pieces of a fortress. Elias directed the driver carefully. By noon, the entrance looked completely different. Where a simple wooden gate once stood, a solid stone barrier now stretched across the entire width of the road. Only a single steel ranch gate remained in the center. But this time, the gate opened inward toward Elias's land, not outward toward. It could only be unlocked from inside. Late that afternoon, Sylvia turned the corner in her SUV and headed toward her usual shortcut. But instead of an open path, she saw something unexpected. The new wall stood tall and completely immovable. Sylvia stopped the vehicle and stepped out slowly. She walked closer to inspect the structure. The gate handle sat on the ranch side of the barrier, completely out of reach. Elias stood calmly on the other side. For the first time in weeks, Sylvia couldn't simply drive through. The conversation that followed would finally settle the issue once and for all. Sylvia crossed her arms as she looked at the wall. She told Elias that the road had always been accessible to the neighborhood. Elias listened patiently. Then he pointed toward the property markers on the ground. Every inch of that road sat inside his legal boundary. The HOA rules applied to the houses inside Eagle Ridge Estates, but the ranch had been there long before the HOA ever existed. Sylvia insisted the shortcut was convenient for residents. Elias nodded. Convenient, maybe, but not permitted. He explained calmly that the new wall simply protected the property line. Sylvia looked around the entrance again, realizing there was no simple way around it. The structure was far too wide, too solid, and too permanent. A few passing neighbors slowed their cars to watch. Sylvia finally returned to her SUV without saying another word. For the first time since discovering the shortcut, she was forced to drive the long route back through the neighborhood streets. But the real impact of Elias's decision would appear during the next HOA meeting. Word about the new ranch wall spread quickly through Eagle Ridge Estates. Several residents mentioned the situation. Some admitted they had used the shortcut before as well. Others quickly pointed out that Elias had every legal right to close off his own private dirt road. The HOA board reviewed the property maps during the meeting. The documents confirmed exactly what Elias had explained. The dirt road was never part of the HOA. It had always belonged to the ranch. Sylvia remained completely quiet for most of the discussion. Eventually, the board agreed that the community should respect the ranch boundary moving forward. The shortcut was simply gone. A week later, traffic patterns in the neighborhood returned to normal. Residents used the proper streets again, and the ranch entrance remained peaceful. But the wall standing beside that gate had become more than a barrier. It had become a permanent reminder. Some boundaries exist for a reason, and ignoring them too many times can lead to consequences no one ever expects. Autumn arrived quietly at Eagle Ridge Estates. Golden sunlight stretched across the ranch fields each evening as Elias finished his work and closed the gate for the night. The stone wall stood strong beside the entrance, blending naturally with the landscape. Sylvia still lived in the neighborhood, but she never attempted to use the shortcut again. Instead, she drove the exact same streets as everyone else. Neighbors passing the ranch often slowed down to admire the craftsmanship of the wall Elias had built. It looked less like a barrier and more like a landmark. It was a quiet symbol of the moment when someone decided to protect what belonged to them. Sometimes solving a problem doesn't require arguments. Sometimes the solution is simply building something strong enough that the problem disappears on its own. In this case, one ranch wall managed to do exactly that. That was the final twist in this HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.